Welcome to this episode of the Modern Crip Theology podcast. We're delighted that you're listening to us or watching us on YouTube. And one quick announcement that we will be publishing a journal issue this fall. So if people have articles or stories or creative work you have and you think would be a good fit for the journal, please submit or be in touch with us through our email. We would be excited to have your work. And today we're delighted to be joined by two of our contributors, Kate and Katherine. So before we jump into questions, would both of you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your piece in the journal? So Katherine, I'd invite you to get us going.
Okay, I'm Katherine Schneider. I'm blind from birth. I'm a retired clinical psychologist, author of 4 books and a blog, disability activist by starting awards and serving on boards. I grew up liberal Protestant, then nothing, then Church of the Month, Methodist, Catholic. Now I'd say I'm an ecumenical Christian, including in-person participation in an inclusive ministry church. And I'm an armchair theologian, no expert. I'm accompanied by my guide dog, Calvin, who is sleeping at my feet and may have comments, but probably not.
Wonderful, Katherine. My guide dog Noel is on my feet too, so I'm sure they would have fun together if they met. And Kate, can you introduce yourself and your work?
Yeah, sure. I'm Kay Aldred. I am based in the UK. Academically, loosely, in that inverted commas, I'm a theologian. My work, but by profession, I was a secondary school teacher for 20 years until a burnout and then late diagnosed autistic ADHD. And I now work as a development lead at Neurodiverse Connection, which is a community interest company. I work primarily with health services to support neurodivergent affirming practice within health and social care. But I do have a really acute interest in embodied theology, embodiment theology, and also interested in safeguarding all spaces, and that includes spiritual and religious spaces. And that's what I was invited to do a commentary on. Delighted to be here. No pets. No pets for me.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. Welcome. It's so lovely to be here with you today. And we're going to get started by asking you some questions today, Kay. So we wanted to ask you, because you mentioned the word just right before. So what is safeguarding? And can you tell us why might it be lacking in some Christian communities?
Yeah, sure. So for me, safeguarding is an active. It's something that everybody needs to be part of. I kind of work to what the NHS description of safeguarding. That's the National Health Service over here, which is around protecting people from harm and abuse. And it's a collective responsibility. And for me, why might it be lacking in some faith communities? Mainly, I think it's because these communities, Christian communities particularly, at least I can only speak for the Anglican denomination because that was what I was part of, don't have external regulation. It's not an externally overseen aspect of Christian communities, and therefore safeguarding for me will always be lacking if there's not an independent oversight kind of or person going on, something that is separate to the community, someone that is separate to that. So yeah, I think, does that speak to it, Amy, or is there anything else?
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to ask you, so like, do you when you talk about safeguarding, do you think that there's not like the ministers or the other people who work at the church, they need some help with doing this work? Like, are they not being trained on safeguarding? Or is it something that might like they might need a little bit of help to be able to start to do more formally? Hope that question makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense perfectly. I think actually there are pockets of really good training going on in faith communities, and I think the problem for me when I'm looking at faith community is the overarching sort of control that safeguarding, that there may be some people that are really well trained in safeguarding that then report up the chain, but then the chain stops because it's a closed system. So if there's no external eyes and no external accountability to someone who is outside the faith system, it's going to protect itself. Closed systems protect themselves. And so, yes, I'm sure that everybody can benefit of up-to-date training with safeguarding, me included. I'm constantly having to be up to date with it. But for me, it's the closed system nature that kind of compromises the safeguarding that goes on.
Okay. And your work focus on safeguarding for neurodivergent people. So I wonder if you can explain the particularities among neurodivergent peoples, and then also specifically among neurodivergent women and girls.
Yeah, sure. So from my understanding and my research, predators move in environments where they are protected by the system, but also where that there may be more and I'm using the word here, vulnerable people, not that they are, that neurodivergent causes of vulnerability, but they are yeah, they can be more vulnerable. So for neurodivergent individuals, where we don't feel like we fit in the world, or we are seeking to find meaning, I often say we're seeking for another world within this one. We will find ourselves often in faith or spiritual communities seeking meaning and belonging, those basic spiritual needs that we need met. I think the intersection between neurodivergence, women and girls, gender, and the increased risk is because of the power imbalance and dynamics that already exist within patriarchal organizations. So white male hierarchical dominance, and like paternalistic, kind of like overtones. It means that it can be harder just to even report and speak up about abuse because of that hierarchy. Plus, we are conditioned in our gender to be nice girls, and of course religious narrative will support that and doctrine can support that, and our nervous system response when we're under threat is to tend and befriend rather than fight or flight. Even to some extent we go to the fawn response, and because autistic girls often genuinely seek connection and are really open-hearted. I'm using a word that you wouldn't find in the research, but like literally see the best, and find it really hard to conceive that people have malintent, want to do malintent, or have, you know, well, I'm trying to think of a way to put it, want to harm them. They are automatically more at risk of predatory and abusive behavior. And so I think it's that intersection of all those things that increases the vulnerability and risk, that predators can choose to abuse this particular demographic. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, that totally answers it. Thank you so much. And wow, I'm so glad that you're able to write for us and come and let folks know about this. So thank you. So the next question that we wanted to ask you was about, so you said in the piece you mentioned experiences of feeling minimized and dismissed when you had reported abuse in the past. So how do you hope it will go for other people who are in the same situation?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and very, very timely at the moment with everything that's unfolding within the Anglican Church in the UK. So I would hope, firstly, that the person would be validated and that proper procedures and processes would be followed, so that there is a reassurance for the other person that there would be, that it's being taken seriously, that there will be a thorough investigation, and that the outcome will be transparently communicated. I would also hope that the investigation takes, unlike me, is done by someone external. I keep talking about this, to the organisation, and from my perspective, external to their particular church community, because pre-existing relationships compromises transparency and an effective kind of investigation taking place. But yeah, the main thing is that they receive trauma-informed care, that they are validated and understood, and that the process is transparent and handled externally. Does that answer it, Amy?
Definitely, yeah.
And when you talk about external investigations, you mean people outside the local congregation, right? It could be people connected to the wider church, but not members of the local church, right?
I think to begin with, and not members of the local church would be a start. But for me, I think there should be an external regulatory body that inspects faith communities, like we have here for education, Ofsted, and the CQC for health. So I'm really very much in that camp, and that on yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. I lost my question. Thinking me.
Welcome.
So, we wondered finally, we might have more questions as the conversation goes on, but can you talk about some signs of health in responding to these situations of abuse or being places of belonging in healthy faith communities?
Yeah, sure. For me, in a green flag for a healthy community is that your body tells you it's safe. I'm very much about felt sense, so that you know in your body that you feel safe, but that can be not for everybody. And so I think really a respect for individuality and diversity, and also critical thinking that everything can be questioned, that there's, you know, without repercussion or retribution. You can ask questions and really critically think and be curious. I think for me also a green flag is that mental and physical health is promoted, and actually that there's not that we can explore all ways of supporting our mental and physical health. I'm very much embodiment focused. Also, I think for me, an emphasis on service to the wider world and the wider community, that it isn't just about serving the closed community, that there's a service to the people outside of the community is a green flag as well. And accountability, that the feedback is invited, encouraged. And then I think also what I wanted to mention is if there's any ruptures in relationship, you know, because we will get things wrong, that repair is healthy and happens. That to me, and all of that is modeled through the leadership, because if we're not seeing it, then it's not being it for me. That it, you know, you really have if you have that hold the power in any community, but especially in a faith community, you walk your talk and you model that accountability. I hope that's enough, but do let me know if you need any more.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your work, and yeah, some important questions and thoughts for churches and communities of faith to explore.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kate. I was also thinking while you were talking that I really like that you brought in the idea of repair, that you see that there's hope in this situation and there can be repair done ethically, and yeah, and there's hope in that for me, I think. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank
And
you.
so now we're going to talk to Kathie about some questions. So lovely to have you here, Kathie. And we wanted to ask you, the first question was about, we're going to dig into some disability theology now. So would you be able to talk to us about how disability theologians like Nancy Easland and John Hull have shaped your relationship with your faith?
I'll back up a little bit, if it's okay, before that, to
Sure.
put it in the context of liberation theology. I have a popular understanding of that, and it's actually what attracted me to theology / religion / investigating faith, with the themes of beyond charity to activism, working with people instead of doing charity for people. I think liberation theology's got a lot of good going for it, but it really hasn't had a lot of work from a disability perspective, all sorts of Black liberation, women's liberation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not a whole lot disability. And the parts of it that have attracted me to dig in, how does God view the disability? And for me, that boils down to those of us with disabilities were wonderfully made. We're all wonderfully made. How do you read the Bible in the light of our disability circumstances, acknowledging that it was written in a particular historical context, which is not necessarily the same as today? For example, the old Leviticus, you can't do temple service if you have a blemish kind of stuff. That was then. this is now. We do well to realize that the world has gone beyond that kind of theology. Hopefully, churches do too. How do you view Jesus? Fellow sufferer, a guide for how to deal with unjust systems, nonviolent action, emphasis on that in liberation theology, solidarity with people with and without disabilities, asking us what we want, being with us and for us instead of doing for us. For example, in the situation our previous speaker spoke of, I live in hope that there's somebody in the chain of command with disabilities that has a perspective on the abuse or possible abuse that took place, so that that disability perspective is there in the dealing with the situation. What's the kingdom of God like? Liberation theology does a good job of saying, hey, it's in our midst, in addition to being in the sweet by and by kind of thing. Now, these themes of liberation theology have been dealt with well by people like Nancy Iceland, John Hall, Nancy Iceland talking about disabled God, Kathie Black talking about the interdependent God, Weiss Block talking about accessible God, talking about copious hosting, John Hall talking about darkness. In the beginning was darkness, and he's a blind guy, and he's talking about darkness not as evil, etc., but as the place where things began.
Yeah, thinking that were all of us were nodding along to your words here. How have they shaped your view of faith, your own faith?
I've picked up ideas from each of them, and when I'm trying to deal with a concrete faith situation, and I think we'll get to that later in some of my prayer seeds, but I sort of touch back on, wait a minute, where would Jesus be in this situation?
Right.
And he'd be beside me in the struggle.
Right. The importance of solidarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk to us about your prayer scenes?
Yeah, I kind of got this idea from Kate Bowler, who had stage 4 cancer, and that informs her theological work. One of her recent books is called Have a Beautiful, Terrible Day. meditations, and she's written a lot of prayers that deal with concrete situations that she and other people find themselves in who have illnesses. So I thought, well, let's play with this. I originally thought I would write a psalm, but I'm not up to writing a psalm at this point. So I wrote some prayer seeds, for example, prayers to be healed from hurt when I'm underestimated, heal me from resentment, give me rest from struggles, for acceptance, give me courage to reach out for help and to reach out to be helped. Give me joy in the funny parts of interacting with other people and their abilities and disabilities. Give me dreams of a more accessible world. Give me an appreciation of beauty, awe, and wonder that isn't just visual. So much of the emphasis is on visual. Let's turn that around and enjoy the non-visual as well. Give prayers of thanks for the blessings of disability, because it's not all struggle, struggle, struggle. Some of the things that disability has developed in me, things like dogged persistence, knowing about interdependence, knowing how to listen well. As a blind person, my life depends on it, but I think all of our lives would be better if we listened more. Sometimes I'm thankful for not seeing the ugliness. I worked as a psychologist, and an awful lot of the people that came to see me felt that they were ugly. And they knew that I wasn't looking at them. I wasn't seeing them that way. I could dig beneath that and hear the inner beauty, the urge to grow. And that was a gift. My ability to code switch, to kind of improv, make plan B, plan C when plan A doesn't work out, prioritize because of fibromyalgia, which I also have. I can't do it all. Not that anybody can, but I found out that I had to be better at prioritizing. I'm continually challenged to become more patient, to ask for what I need, to have an ability to advocate on the fly. For example of that, yesterday I was in a business meeting with some fellow people from the county board, and one of them said, well, Kathie, we're really glad that you're here and adding your perspective, but you're expensive. And I was gobsmacked by that. And my better angel, luckily, was on my shoulder, and all I said was, I may be expensive, but I'm richly worth it. And everybody laughed and we went on to something else. But how do you deal with God's grace with people that say things that they ought not to say? So that's some of my prayer seeds and prayer life.
Thank you so much, Kathie. Yeah, it sounds like you had a lot of patience and grace with that person. I'm glad. I don't know if my better angel has my shoulder that much these days, but I'm glad I'm glad yours was there for you.
At that moment.
At that moment, yeah. All right. All right. So you mentioned a word when you were just speaking there, the word interdependence. So we were wondering, could you explain for our listeners what is that? And what are some ways you've experienced interdependence in your life?
In modern times, it seems like there's an awful lot of talk about being independent, and I don't buy it. I don't think any of us is independent. To me, we're all interdependent to different degrees in different situations, but we need each other. We need God. A real simple example is I've had the privilege of working with guide dogs for 50 years, and I have learned so much from each one of those critters. Working with another intelligent creature, they're a gift from God, and we work as a team. In some aspects, I'm in charge, in some aspects, they're in charge, and it's a back and forth, interdependent situation. And I think our lives are much more like that than they are like John Wayne, independent kind of attitude. Now, I think sometimes when people think about people with disabilities, they think, oh yeah, you need me, and you need the person without a disability may think that I need their help, and maybe true, but they don't think about it in the other way of what do they need from me? Hopefully it doesn't just mean that they need gratitude from me.
Right.
They need somebody to feel better than from me, but hopefully they need some of my gifts as much as I need some of their gifts. I see a lot of this as I work with a local group called Ecumenical Inclusive Ministry, and once a month, different churches provide a program including worship, Sunday school, and a meal for people with cognitive and other disabilities, the kind of people that get the stink eye in regular churches, which they shouldn't, but they do. And so this is a church for people with disabilities. I got involved with it particularly because I wanted to be sure that it wasn't yet again people without disabilities doing for people with disabilities. So I wanted to get in there and work on lowering us versus them kind of feeling, and also lowering the you don't have anything to give, to try to get to where everybody's gifts are used in that church. Everybody belongs, everybody is needed in that particular fellowship. And working with volunteers who come in and come from all different places as far as their views of disability, it provides many opportunities for me to work on some of those things that I was praying about earlier, like patience. When somebody tells me, oh no, you can't use scissors, during the craft period, I'll do it for you kind of thing. To give a Christian response to that as opposed to a immediate harsh response. So it's a place where I grow every month.
That's great. Yeah. Sometimes there needs to be lots of education to get to places of mutuality and reciprocity, for sure. In your piece, you also raised some stories in scripture that refer to blindness. And there are a wide variety of views and interpretations of these scriptures, but can you tell us how you interpret them, how they can be harmful, or how churches can interpret them to be life-giving?
Well, the oldest kind of interpretation, blindness, punishment from God, and as something that makes somebody unclean, like that Leviticus thing about you can't offer temple worship, you can't be clergy kind of thing if you have a disability or blindness in particular. Another old view of blindness is, or any disability, is it's a defect to be healed. And particularly if you're good enough or if you pray enough, then you'll be healed. In the New Testament, Jesus questions, like in John 9, the man born blind story, most principally, he says, no, that wasn't the sin of the person or the sin of his parents that he was born blind. It was that God's works be made manifest. And I think that's a very liberating view to say, okay, how can my blindness work toward the glory of God? Where can I contribute? The fact that St. Paul, in all probability, had a disability. We have a few models from scripture of people with disabilities being in leadership positions or being able to use their gifts. But you kind of got to scratch around and look for them and interrogate them to get beyond the blind equals darkness, sin kind of stuff, and beyond the, okay, object of charity. If you give a feast, invite the blind because they can't repay you. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all in favor of being invited to the feast, but I probably can bring a dish as well to the feast.
I love that.
Yeah, and I really liked what you said as well, Kathie, about interrogating the scriptures and as disability theologians or folks who are preaching and teaching to feel comfortable with doing that and take a second look and try to dig around and see what else could be there, like Miriam had said, that is life-giving for folks. So thank you so much for that. At this point in the podcast, what we usually do is we ask both of you if you have any questions or wonderings for each other now that you've taken a look at each other's pieces or you've had a chance to meet each other today. So, Kay, I was wondering if there's anything that you might want to ask Kathie, or if you have any thoughts you want to share.
Yes, I really loved that you spoke to you didn't speak directly to the sensory experience, and that we should invite more ways of how I heard it, and I might be wrong, Kathie, so do tell me if I am. The focus is on the visual, whereas actually there's a whole inner world which you talked about in your clinical practice, of sensing and the kind of the connection or the communion we get through that. Is there anything else? If I misinterpreted you, do tell me. But is there anything else you could expand on that? Because for me, from an embodiment perspective, a somatic perspective, and a nervous system perspective, that felt sense experience of divinity is the thing that has kept me connected to any element of faith. It's only that the visual, it's not, because what I see is just not of divinity. Is there anything you could expand on that or share?
Yeah, I love your emphasis on embodiment, because I think that's a key, that our theologizing is not just a head trip, but it's lived experience, including bodily experience. For example, Advent in the Christian calendar talks a lot about light in the darkness. Well, for those of us who are born blind, light in the darkness, yeah, we know what it means, but it doesn't connect. So I've asked some preachers to think about, hey, could you say light and warmth? Because oftentimes light produces warmth as well. So could you say light and warmth in the dark? Now, that might be particularly popular in Wisconsin, where I live, and other cold climates, but other senses other than just the visual sense, as well as the inner sense that you were talking about, Kay.
Well, that's lovely. Thank you, Kathie. And Kathie, do you have any questions or wonderings or thoughts for Kay that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would love to know more about the system change that you hope for, so that the safety considerations for people with disabilities are taken seriously. How do you imagine getting a disability perspective in there? Because I think so often people with disabilities are treated as little innocent children or people without agency? How can you get the people in the system to have a different view and to take the allegations seriously?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Kathie, and you've kind of answered it. So I'm going to reflect back some of the things you said. Theologically, we need to center liberation theology as the theology to lead from, and to inform policy and procedure. However, the model that I work in the UK, so we could transfer the model of how I work. So although I'm a trained professional, I lead through my lived experience. So I'm implementing support and change in mental health systems through lived experience. My worth is my neurodivergent embodied experience. And so we need, as you said, we need the visibility, we need the people with the lived experience, the disabled people, to be the leaders and who are informing the policy changes. And in terms of safeguarding the victim survivors, to, you know, to be the people who are writing the new policies, creating the new safeguarding structures. Aside what I've already said about it need to be an external, but in terms of changing how church is, you have to center people who have the lived experience. I hope that answers, Kathie, which you already said as well earlier.
That is wonderful, and I hear your excitement about it, and that's exciting to me that work is going on.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to you both, Kathie and Kay. It was great talking with you and learning with you, and yeah, we hope we all talk again and see some of your work in the journal in the future.
Keep
And
up the good work with the journal and the podcast.
thank you.
Admire it. Admire it.
Yeah, I agree fully. It's amazing work, and also the positioning and the generosity you extend to the people who you platform and allow to have a voice. It's phenomenal. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's just want to say that.
Great.